This is the Brisbane Lions Fancast with Dom Fay and Michael Whiting.
Well, it wasn't the prettiest of games, Mike, but we're sitting here after yet another win for the Lions.
We didn't think it was going to be pretty, did we, Dom? It never is when you play Melbourne, but that's 5 wins out of the last 9 now, so plenty of reason to smile if you're a Brisbane Lions fan.
Absolutely. Now, we're going to kick off with the main talking point out of the match, for me at least. Daniel McStay. Where did that come from?
I thought you were going to say Daniel Merritt then. We'll get on to him later.
We'll get to him later. The good news first. McStay, where did that come from?
That was exciting, wasn't it? He got a chance forward. I guess we've only seen small glimpses of him in defence, and when we've had Maguire and Patfull and Gardiner down in defence, haven't seen a lot of McStay. Threw him forward and look what he can do. He's got a great leap, hasn't he, and a good set of hands.
Well, it's funny because of last year's draftees, we've seen a little bit from Robertson and Cutler, enough to suggest they'll be good players. Obviously, a lot from Aish, a lot from Taylor, and a lot from Gardiner. So you might, along with Jono Freeman, obviously, who was also drafted last year, you've thought there's a solid core there. McStay was the one of the draftees who we probably hadn't seen much from at senior level yet, and then he just comes on the weekend and suggests that, well, he could be the best of the lot potentially if he pulls that form off more often.
Well, just quietly, Justin Lepich is very, very excited by McStay as much as any of those draftees. So I guess we hadn't seen much reason yet. The coach is very optimistic and had been before the weekend, and I guess he'll be even more so after Sunday's performance. But yeah, just I guess the pack marks, you don't see that from kids very often. The one in the last quarter was particularly exciting when he basically outleapt Jeremy Howe, which not many people do, and crashed that pack and took a mark in the square to seal the match. So his leading was very good. He looked like quite a good forward, and he's the type of guy that you think he can go both ends as his career progresses. I mean, we're making very early judgments here, but he looks like a guy that potentially might be able to go either end, depending on what the Lions need. See,
with some young key forwards, you think they might get a few of their goals by fluke. But what I thought watching McStay on Sunday, and I want to put this disclaimer there, this isn't a comparison I'm making, but there were elements. So when I watched Jeremy Cameron play the past few years, you've seen that despite the fact he doesn't really have the bulk as such, he just has the smarts up forward. He knows where to lead. He knows how to approach a marking contest to be best placed to take the mark, and a good set of hands. Now, those kind of skills are what has made him, the best young key forward in the competition. There were elements of that in McStay's game that it wasn't just a fluke. It was that he knew where to lead, and he knew where to come into the marking contest to take the mark, and a great set of hands to complement it too. I mean,
he looked likely, didn't he? He just looked likely, I guess. I think you might have mentioned it a few weeks ago. When you look at key forwards, you're just sort of looking at what their best can do. We know it's not going to happen all the time, but we want to see what their best can do, and that was pretty exciting. And again, Michael Close, who's making a really, really good fist since John O'Brien retired, of being that primary forward. He kicked another couple of goals on the weekend. I mean, that's two very young guys, I think 19 and 20, Close and McStay, and holding up that forward line on Sunday and kicking goals when they were needed and when the pressure was on. Yeah,
there's definite glimpses that you're seeing of them, which is just exactly what you want to see that they can, because a glimpse becomes more regular form, and that turns into very regular form.
It's not going to happen every week, and it hasn't happened every week, but that's the lot of playing a stack of young players. You're not going to get the same performance every week, but I guess the last 5 weeks, 9, there's been a few hiccups in between there, but generally 5 out of the last 9 have been victories, 3 out of the last 5. The difference between the best and the worst is sort of closing a little bit. Which is as much as you can hope for when you're playing so many kids.
Absolutely. It has turned around ever since, and we reference him every week, but Stefan Martin's returned to the side, who played outstanding again. It seems every week we praise him, and then he comes out and goes to another level on the weekend, which he did against Melbourne. It was just an outstanding game from Martin.
And he started from the first bounce. I think he had 7 or 8 possessions in the first 10 minutes and a handful of clearances, and he just didn't slow down. And doing it against his old team, I spoke to him the day or 2 days before the game, and he said he was a little bit, maybe not apprehensive, but he was a bit unsure of how he'd go. It was the first time he played the old team. He was going up against the guy that had taught him so much in Mark Jamar. Had a lot of respect for Jamar. He still speaks to him quite regularly about opposing ruckman and different things to do with rucking. But he just dominated Mark Jamar, and I think he got the 10 Coaches Association votes, and you'd have to think he'll get a couple of Brownlow votes out of that performance. But his form is just incredible. I mean, we thought that after 2 or 3 matches back into the team, and now he's kept that form for, I think, 7 or 8 matches now. So another amazing performance by Stefan Martin, and I guess he's got 4 to go, and it'll be interesting now as Matthew Leuenberger gets a bit more footy under his belt, just what happens there.
Yeah, he does just keep building, which is really impressive because it's not just in the ruck where he's great. He is good in the ruck, but it's around the ground and also when the ball's on the ground. He's very agile for a big man. He just he provides a contest all around the ground, and I've noticed particularly also it's helping when we do kick long to packs, having someone like Martin in there because, I mean, if he doesn't mark it, he is creating that contest. He is bringing the ball to ground because he is that really big, strong man who I guess we haven't had leading in the packs, around the ground for a fair while now.
That was another interesting thing when I chatted to him last week, and I brought up the dilemma of trying to fit him and Matthew Leuenberger into the team, and just sort of pose a question to him about playing forward. And we know that he's done his best work being the sole ruckman, but he made a good point and said he thinks he's a much better footballer since last time he played forward. He doesn't actually have that much experience, full stop. He's only played 60 or 70 AFL games, and we're judging him as a forward, as a struggling forward when he's been there, but he doesn't have much experience, and he feels he's a much better player now. So if he gets his chance back in the forward line, he'll make a better fist of it. So that might play out at the end of this season or into next season, depending on how Justin Lepich wants to play those 2 ruckmen.
Yeah, a lot of positivity out of what was, for the most part, a pretty dour game, I think, ultimately. And it was just great to see...
Thank God for that last quarter.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It was great to see the excitement on the faces of the players and the coaching staff and how happy Lepich was in that last quarter. I mean, there's always, at this time of year, when you're getting towards the end of the season, there's always talk in some circles about, is it best for them to win right now or go for a draft pick? Well, I think Sunday is the exact proof as to why you always go for the win.
And just a different kind of win, wasn't it? Against Gold Coast last week, Brisbane blew them out of the water straight away and hung on. We've seen matches where they've got out to a lead and clung on. But this one, they had to fight and battle and come from behind in the last quarter. We haven't seen that too often, and Justin Lepich said last week there was no doubt they were going to get frustrated during the match because that's the way Melbourne play. But they showed enough composure and thought their way through it and backed themselves and were able to run over the top, which we haven't seen too often this season. So just another little box tick there for Brisbane, and I guess a lot of confidence in their development from those young fellas.
Was also a bit of a point of interest considering around this stage last year we were looking at Paul Roos as potential coach of the Lions. Just a bit of a sliding doors moment, seeing
Yeah.
what we are, what we could have been, I guess. Obviously, you never quite know the circumstances, but
different.
There was a lot of, I guess, not unhappiness when we missed out on Roos, and I'm not saying Roos wouldn't have been a good coach, but I think now the majority of fans are pretty happy that we have Justin Lepich in charge.
I think so too. I think you're right. Like, you can't... they're very hard to compare. They're 2 totally different clubs and set up scenarios, lists and whatever. So Roos would have been a fantastic coach. He's done a lot of positive for Melbourne this year, but I don't think one fan would be complaining about Justin Lepich up here at the moment. He's just done a phenomenal job. We've seen the improvement on the field and also the improvement off the field as far as culture and whatnot. And that's not to knock previous regimes or setups, but the feeling around the Lions at the moment is very positive, and Justin Lepich is a big driver behind that.
Which is something we should touch on now, the re-signing of a few great players last week. I know there was some concerns about Marco Paparone simply because he has a bit of an interesting family situation back at home in Perth, with his dad being quite ill, still battling cancer. But it was great to see him recommit to the club for 2 further years, and then followed by the great news also of Lewis Taylor and Darcy Gardiner extending their contracts. It's really polar opposite from this stage last year when we were just hearing complete silence out of the young
Everyone's
players.
climbing in now, aren't they? Climbing on and re-signing. So I guess that's a bit of it's a massive tick for the club. They obviously learnt a lot from the end of last year. They've got feedback, I guess, from those players and managers that left, and had a good internal look, and they've added extra people into their development department. There's also Justin Lepich inviting guys around for dinner left, right and centre. Just a lot of little things, and I know some of the leadership group are sort of embracing the younger players a lot more than they may have done previously. So everyone's had a good look, and the results are obvious. The first year guys and second year guys just love the club at the moment. Like, they cannot speak highly. Every single one of them that I've spoken to, which isn't a comprehensive list, but they all say they love the club, and they're unequivocal about that. So great news, and it's, I guess, a huge vote of confidence that they're signing on so early. I mean, these guys still had 12 months left of their contract, and they're extending for another year right now. So huge vote of confidence.
Yeah, absolutely. They clearly are confident in the club, and I think that's helping fans be really confident in the club as well.
Absolutely.
As we did say, there's a lot of positivity around the club, which might have led to the luck that I think we got with Daniel Merritt getting off suspension. Now,
I'm glad you said that.
there's a lot of Lions fans saying, "Oh no, he was going for the ball." Yes,
Yep.
he was going for the ball, but I would not have been shocked if that came back, particularly with his record at 3 or 4 weeks out.
Well, I would have thought that as well. I mean, I looked at it and thought that's on a base grading. That's a 1 or 2 weeker. Daniel's got form this year. He's been suspended this year already, so I think he carries a 30% loading. He's got carryover points. I was thinking he'd get around about that 3 to 4 week mark myself. So luckily for the Lions, and they've had a bit of I don't know whether it's luck. I mean, Tommy Rockliff's been suspended a couple of times, and I think he should have been, but you could argue that based on examples subsequent to that he was unlucky. So I don't know if these things all work out in the end, and if that's the way you look at it, but Brisbane and particularly Dan Merritt dodged a bullet there, that's for sure.
Well,
I think, yeah.
Yeah, look, I personally, on watching that Merritt incident, would have said that it felt more like a suspension-worthy incident than either of Rockliff's from this year. But that's just how the MRP works sometimes, and they did have logic behind their decision, and I think everyone's pretty happy that we've got a bit lucky there with Merritt being able to take the field this weekend.
Yeah, I think so too. Like Dan's, that incident on Sunday was not malicious. He did have his eyes on the ball. He was trying to spoil, but the facts were he left his feet after the mark was taken, and he did collect Cam Pedersen, and he did break his nose. So he chose to jump and leave his feet and spoil, and there was a resulting head injury. So a bit lucky there, but like we sort of said, I think whether these things even out or not, we don't know. But in this instance, they got a bit of luck, and you just take that and run with it, don't you? I think Dan will be buying a few lotto tickets this week.
Well, I think it's all part of the good vibes coming out of the club.
It is,
Greg
yeah.
Swan, a few good wins, a great crowd against the Gold Coast. Fought out a tough win against Melbourne, and now some luck with Dan Merritt. It's all going well for the Lions. Another thing that we'll touch on just before we get to our interview with Darcy Gardiner is the fact that Gardiner won the Rising Star, which was
More
another
good
bit of
news.
good news. Yeah,
Just keeps rolling. And he had another terrific game. I think it was 18 or 19 touches and a dozen marks. So and up against Jack Watts for most of that game, from what I could tell on the television. So terrific and well deserved. He's been great in the dozen or so matches that he's played at this level. Fitted in beautifully into that back line, taking key position players each week, and done a terrific job.
For a key position player to play the majority of games in his first season is virtually unheard of in the current AFL setup, unless you're an expansion club. So he really deserves a lot of plaudits for that. And it's not that he's been given games; he's absolutely earned his place there. And I'd say there was a feeling within many fans that this is long overdue, this Rising Star nomination.
It is, and I think if you haven't watched it yet, I'd encourage you to go onto the AFL. .com website and have a look at the montage and the footage that's been put together, a package for Darcy Gardiner for winning his nomination. It's great footage. I mean, we normally see midfielders with loads of possessions and goals and whatever, but Dizzy's highlights are spoils, shepherds, tackles. It's just fantastic vision to watch. So if you haven't had a look, go and check it out, because this guy's blue collar, down and dirty, just a guy that I think every supporter loves to watch.
A superstar of the club of the future. I'm pretty confident that will be the case. And we'll be joined by Darcy Gardiner on the Fancast right after this.
The best way to keep track of everything Lions is to head to lions.com.au. It's the first place to find the latest Lions news and videos, get the lowdown on upcoming games, results and player stats. There's also great ways to interact with live chats, downloads and Player of the Year voting updates. And with a social media hub, you can connect with all the Lions' social media activity. Lions.com.au. Everything Lions, all in one place.
We're joined on the Fancast this week by the club's latest Rising Star nominee, Darcy Gardiner. Thanks very much for joining the show today, Darcy.
Yeah, no worries.
After what has been an amazing debut season from you, obviously there's still a few games to go, but was the Rising Star nomination a real vote of confidence from, I guess, the wider football public in you that you really have had a great first year?
Yeah, I guess it was. It's something that's good to be noticed for. Each week I'll sort of look to improve and just have the consistency in my game, so it's good that that's sort of been noticed, I guess, outside of Brisbane and that.
Darcy, you were touted as probably the best key defender in last year's draft, if not the best, certainly one of the very best in that draft. What did you expect of yourself coming into this first season?
Oh, look, I didn't expect to be probably where I am right now. I set a goal at the start of the year probably to play a maximum of one game and just look to improve myself in the reserves and each week. And so I've definitely exceeded my expectations and just trying to keep, like I said, keep learning and improving each week.
I did actually mention a bit earlier in the show that it is almost unheard of for a key position player to play the majority of the season in his first season. Has it been, I guess, a surprise to those at the club as well that you've been able to play so much of the season, or was it really as soon as you got into the senior side it's been pretty smooth sailing from there?
Probably, I guess, a bit of both. But with my sort of size and with the other sort of couple of big boys, I've sort of been playing a different, sort of like a third tall. So I've been on the talls and smalls, I guess, which changes it up a little bit, not rather than just locking down on one big forward. So that's probably how I made the transition a little bit easier. So I can add a few more strings to my game, I guess.
Mate, can you take us back to that first game? My memory could be wrong here, but I think you played Richmond up here and you got into a bit of a wrestle and a bit of a scrap with Dusty Martin. Can you tell us about that, I guess, those early games and how you settled in? And you obviously didn't seem to take too long to find your feet.
We had a little bit of a tussle there. I was a bit frustrated, I think, at the time. But early on, I guess, you just sort of had to go out there and nothing over the top, but just try and, hold your own out there because they're obviously a lot bigger and more experienced. So it's important that you don't sort of let them get on top of you and into your head and that type of thing, being such a young player.
There's been a lot of love from Lions fans about the way you were able to get under the skin of Jake Carlisle in the Essendon game earlier in the year. And, as Mike mentioned with the Dustin Martin thing too, there's been a few examples of it now. What have you been doing to get under the skin of these players? Is it just a bit of niggle, a bit of talk? What's your secret, if you can give it away?
Well, it hasn't been a lot of talk or anything. The one with Carlisle, it was sort of just a spur of the moment. Like, I barely played with him the whole match, and I think I've just got him at the wrong time, and I've pushed him when he didn't want to be pushed, and he hadn't been going so well, and he just reacted to me, and I was the one who was on the end of it, I guess.
You seem to have these, I guess we hear the phrase white line fever. Is that something you've got, Darcy? You're a very sort of quietly spoken guy off the field from what we can tell at the moment, but you like to sort of play aggressive once you get on across that white line. Yeah,
that's probably the best way of putting it. Outside of when I'm not on the track, I sort of tend to be a bit more quieter than other people and a bit more reserved, and then once I get out there, it's completely different, I reckon. Yeah.
You did mention that you played largely in the third tall in defence role this year. Is that where you see yourself playing long term, or do you think you'll move into one of the main two key position posts alongside probably Justin Clark?
I don't know. That's a good question. I probably couldn't say one or the other. I think it sort of just depends what I come up against, and just week by week which position I'd have to play, I reckon.
Obviously, you've sort of, I guess, based your game so far on your one-on-one defence and closing down your opponent. I guess as all defenders do in their early days, you got a bit more ball on the weekend, and you seem to use it really well. Can you tell us about the evolution of the ball use and trying to become more involved on the offensive side of the game?
That's probably something coming into the AFL that I probably had to get a bit more used to. During TSC, I didn't usually get as much of the ball as I have been lately, so getting it in my hands, obviously you got to be quite efficient with it at this level, or else you can get hurt. So it's just about I've been working on that a fair bit and just trying to stay composed and just hit the easy option. And on the weekend I had a bit of it, just the way Melbourne were playing. It allowed us defenders to get involved a bit more offensively than usual, so that was good.
One of your fellow first-year players, Dan McStay, had a breakout game of his own on the weekend. What's it been like since then? Have you guys gotten around him a fair bit after what was a great performance up forward?
It's been pretty good. He played very well. He switched between defence and forward, I think, for most of the day, and it was good that he was able to go up there and have an impact, and then also come back down and play a role down in defence. So I think that'll give him good confidence to finish up the season well, and I reckon he's going to be a really good player.
Darcy, we know you and Louis Taylor re-signed last week, and Nick Robertson as well. Like, there's a bit of a Marco Paparo, and there's been an influx of young guys sort of re-signing, and we know the problems the club had last year in trying to retain some of the young fellas. Can you tell us, I guess, how the club has embraced you and those sort of first and second year players since you've come to the club?
Yeah, I went through right from the first day. They were just very welcoming, welcoming and open. They brought us straight in, and we went up in front of everyone and talked about ourselves, and everyone came around and said hi and introduced themselves and that, and just little things just involving us outside of footy and that in activities and that type of thing was pretty big at the start. So I think they've done a really good job of making everyone feel like they fit in and they're a part of the team, and which is a good thing.
When you did get drafted, the club was in the middle of a bit of turmoil off-field. Can you tell us what your expectations coming up to the club were, and I guess how different they were maybe to what ended up being the case?
I didn't. Well, before I came up, I didn't really probably know too much about the club, to be honest. Everyone sort of knew about the few of the players leaving, but I don't know. I just sort of come out with an open mind, didn't really think too much about that, and I was pretty happy with how everything was, and nothing seemed to be really different to what I expected, I guess.
Hey, we've heard quite a few of the club sort of hierarchy from the coach down of being very welcoming of the young players by inviting them round for dinner. Have you been able to get a few free feeds along the way, Darcy?
Yeah, I have actually early on, which is pretty handy. Don't have to cook or clean, which is a good thing. There's a fair few. They got groups of us around, which was very, very good by them.
Mate, we know your focus as a team has been to try and limit the opposition in the past few weeks, and you've done that very well. You've got Adelaide this weekend. I'm assuming that'll be another key focus. What are you hoping to get out of the last month of the season?
Yeah, definitely. Coming against Adelaide, they're probably looking to play finals, so it'll be good to sort of knock them off and sort of ruin their chance. But heading into this last month, a key aspect is just sort of trying to restrict the opposition scoring as much as we can, I guess, and then go from there with our offence and try and put it back on them.
With how well things have been building, I guess, off the field, obviously with Greg Swan joining the club as the CEO and more wins and a big crowd a few weeks ago, have you noticed a real sense of positivity growing over the year?
Yeah, definitely, I guess. Obviously, more enjoyable winning, so it's going to be a bit more of a positive environment around the club. I mean, everyone still kept their heads up when things weren't great, and we're able to really turn it around in this second half, which has been a good thing for the players, I guess. It shows that they didn't just give up, and they've really put their heads down the second half of the season, and it's shown in the results.
Well, all the best for the game on Sunday afternoon and for the rest of the season. I hope there's a few more upsets ahead of you.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
The reserves are at Burpengary this weekend, 1:30pm on Saturday afternoon against Southport, while the seniors are Sunday afternoon, 1:10 at the Gabba against Adelaide. Mike, there's an opportunity here in this game because we've been in good form lately. Adelaide were a bit scratchy against West Coast. We've had the wood over them at the Gabba for a little while, I think bar one or two results lately. So there is a real opportunity here to cause another upset.
Gee, they're a funny team, Adelaide, aren't they? A week or so ago, everyone thought, bang, they're in the 8, they're flying now. They knocked off Collingwood, but they were poor last week against West Coast and losing against the Eagles at home. All of a sudden, the Crows are back outside the 8. Backs to the wall again. So, difficult match for Brisbane because I think Adelaide will come up here with the right attitude. But you're spot on, of course, there's a chance for an upset. I mean, the last couple of weeks for Brisbane has been outstanding. They have really limited Gold Coast and Melbourne and been able to get those 2 wins. But I'm really looking forward to it. It's Sunday Arvo game. Can't wait. Confidence
would have to be pretty high within the club at the moment with everything that's been going on, as we've chatted about throughout the show. Whereas I think it might be a little shaky at the Crows at the moment, which might be where we can get an edge over them. I mean, obviously, I think a priority will be to try and get a fast start to keep that confidence going. I mean, if we get to quarter time and like the game in, I think it was 2012, we're down by 40-something points at quarter time, probably won't be too easy to work our way back from that.
No, it won't be, no.
But look, I'm so confident in this one that I'm tipping us. I reckon the Lions will get over the line by just over 3 goals.
Fans love hearing that, Dom, because you get it right more often than I do. So,
so are you tipping?
They are going to be.
You backing us in, or?
Surprisingly, everyone will be shocked. I'm not going to back Brisbane. Everyone will be shocked and delighted at the same time. To be honest, the fact that Adelaide lost last week, I think, counts against Brisbane. They seem to be this team that goes better when they got their backs to the wall and there's something to play for. So I just think their midfield is so good. Patrick Dangerfield, he's a Rory Sloane. I just think their Tex Walker up forward. I just think they've just that little bit more class, but I expect Brisbane to be in there punching right to the end.
Yeah, no, I think you'll be on the money there. I think either way it will be a pretty competitive game. You'd be disappointed if after what we've shown we lost convincingly, because I don't think at the moment Adelaide are a convincingly better side.
No, I'd agree with that as well. We've seen a couple of times Brisbane. I think the last time they won 2 in a row might have been the Bulldogs and Carlton, or Carlton and Bulldogs, and then came out with a flat one against the Giants. So I guess we don't want to see a repeat of that, and there's no indication why that would happen at the moment. The way the Lions are playing.
You wouldn't have thought so. It'll be a great Sunday Arvo game at the Gabba, and if we could pull off another win, Mike, then the positivity will just keep building.
This show will be going for 45 minutes next week.
So yeah, McStay will kick a bag, Lions up by a fair bit, and a third win in a row.
And another rising star on, we'll be laughing.
Oh, absolutely. We'll see if that turns out to be the case when we review the match next week. Until then, this is the Fancast. See ya.